everybody, Ben Woodruff here with another Falconry video. Today's video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about migration and trapping and kind of how that all fits together. Before I do though, if you haven't already, if you could please hit subscribe, it very much helps me keep this channel going. Now, today I was riding up in the mountains and I noticed it's September. We're starting in the mountains to get a little bit of that fall color. Just barely. A few of the maples are starting to turn and starting to get some of that beautiful coloration. And fall is my absolute favorite time of year. I love Halloween. I love the fall. I love everything about it. I love the changing of the seasons. And here very shortly, northern Utah is going to turn just to be a riot of color, an absolute just beautiful mix of colors. All the aspens are going to change, all the maples and all the box elder trees. Nothing as spectacular perhaps as maybe like the northeastern states of, in Canada, the United States, where you get all the hardwood forests, but still absolutely breathtaking, and I love it. And it got me thinking, because this is my favorite time of year, and because I love fall so much, it got me thinking about fall itself and the principles that happen to be about migration and trapping raptors. So sometimes it's good to understand the biology behind something, why something happens. There's certain things that I take for granted because I've been doing falconry for so long. So, for example, in falconry, it used to be that you would trap a bird. In the summertime, you're doing whatever. You're farming, you're hunting, whatever. You have some job. And then in the fall, you trap a migrating bird called a passage bird. Maybe you trap a sparrowhawk migrating through. And then you train it, you hunt with it for the late fall and the winter months, and then you set it free in the spring. The reason being that falconry evolved as a way to get food. So once summer hits, your bird's not hunting, it's molting, it's growing new feathers. And it switches from being a source of food to being a drainer of food and resources. You're having to feed it while it's molting. So for most parts of the world, that was just the way of things. You caught a bird, flew it for the fall and winter, and you set it free in the spring, and you didn't do falconry in the spring. Nowadays, it's different. Most parts of the world, falconry is kind of a leisure sport. It's something we do to enjoy, to connect to nature, to be able to work with these birds. Even if you do eat what you catch, it's not necessarily about that. And when your bird is done for the season, instead of just setting it free and letting it kind of move on with its migration, you might just keep it over for the next season. Let it molt, let it have a good summer, fatten it up, let it grow new feathers, and get a new bird. I mean, and then just, cut the weight down in the fall and then fly it again. Or maybe you buy a captive bred bird. Now that we have captive breeding, maybe you buy a beautiful captive bred falcon or even a hybrid species that you're going to keep it year after year after year because you have a refrigerator, you have a freezer, you can buy frozen meat to feed the bird. So it's a very different prospect than it used to be. And with that in mind, it's kind of interesting when we talk about some of the laws. Like here in the United States, typically the trapping season is in the fall and the winter. Every state can be a little bit different, but those laws are based off of migration. When we trap a bird, we're trapping a first-year bird, a passage bird. So that's a bird that has left its parents, it's learned how to hunt, it's doing its own thing, but it still has its first-year colors. So for example, if you compare like red-tailed hawks, first-year red tails, they don't have a red tail and they're kind of more muted and more monochromatic in their colors. And then once they get their adult colors, they have bright, beautiful red tail and more rich, vibrant colors all over the body, typically. So, and then every year after that, they're going to molt and get in these grown-up feathers. That's what we see with most raptors. Most all raptors, their first-year colors are different than their adult colors. We only trap a first-year bird. We don't trap an adult bird. We don't fly an adult bird because birds of prey mate for life, and you don't want to take away somebody's mate. Now, in the wild, we have to remember there's an 80 to 90% mortality rate the first year. That means their first year of life, there's an 80 to 90% chance that that baby bird is not going to reach 1 year old. It's going to die of starvation. It's going to get killed by a predator. It's going to get shot by somebody. It's going to get electrocuted. Something's going to happen to it. So by the time it's made it to 1 year old, it's seasoned, it has experience, and it can go find itself a mate and start a new life. We don't mess with those adult birds. We only do the first year birds that statistically are likely to die anyways, and you're taking them into your life, training them, hunting with them, and you might be setting them free in the spring, now armed with new experience and a guaranteed way of life. So why do birds migrate? What's the whole big deal? So in the northern hemisphere, Once you get into the fall and the winter, lots of birds start to head south. And it's important to understand not only the predatory birds, but the prey. So little songbirds, birds like starlings, European starlings and sparrows and things like that. In the summertime, there's insects everywhere. Arthropods, it's just a buffet. There's bugs everywhere as far as you can see. You can eat, eat, eat. And that's the best time of year for them to also have their young. Because, protein is a richer food source. And so they're like eating bugs for themselves, eating bugs, feeding their babies grow up. And then the adults and the babies, once it starts to turn cold, all of those arthropods, all those insects either die or go into hibernation. They're nowhere to be found. And so now these insect-eating birds suddenly are like, wow, we got to get out of here. We got to go further south. Now, going further south, first of all, it keeps you hopefully warmer. And you might get far enough south that you find where there's insects that you can eat. But if you don't, then you're switching to eating seeds, which takes more work. Now, why do you want it to be warmer? The warmer part, like 87% of our caloric intake on warm-blooded animals just goes to being warm-blooded, just goes to maintaining a constant body temperature. That's a ton of it. So if all of a sudden the air in the world around you on the outside gets colder, oh geez, you have to eat so many more calories to stay warm. Now that's true of humans too, but think about what we do to aid that. We heat our houses, we bundle up in tons of layers of clothing. Animals only have what they are. Now some animals do grow thicker winter coats, but birds aren't that way. Birds have the feathers they have. And so they're migrating south. They're like, oh, let's go someplace where it's warmer, but it might still be cold. Utah, we have birds that come from the Arctic and they spend their winter in Utah. We have snow and ice here all winter, but it's warmer than up there. And it's easier to find seeds that you can eat. Grasses and seeds and leftover things like that. That's something that they're going to eat. Well, if you have all these songbirds migrating south, you're also going to have the predators that hunt them. So in Utah, for example, we get a lot of kestrels and a lot of merlins and Cooper's hawks and sharp-shinned hawks and a lot of these smaller raptors and bigger ones too, like prairie falcons. Prairie falcons as well. These birds are going to migrate south following their dinner. They could handle the cold up north, but it makes sense for them to follow their prey, which moves south as well. And the extreme far north, a lot of those songbirds are seasonal. They're gone for the season. Now we have a similar thing happen with the mammal hunters. So let's take an example like a red-tailed hawk. Red-tailed hawks can live in just about any elevation. But here in Utah, the bulk of our red-tails in the summertime are up in the mountains. And they're hunting the big rodent booms that happen up there. Like, for example, the Uinta ground squirrels that are only out for the summer and then hibernate all winter. So there's a lot of rodents up high that have these big population booms. So the red-tails they're high in elevation and they are eating these things. Once you get into September, in October, those species go underground, go into hibernation, and the red-tails are like, oh, what do we do? So they go down in elevation to the lower valleys, the mountain valleys, and to begin hunting things like voles and mice and rats instead of these high elevation ground squirrels. And then in addition to coming down in elevation, they will also start to migrate south geographically as well. So they go down in elevation and then go down south geographically, because the further south you get, until you hit the equator, you're going to get warmer and warmer and warmer. So there's some birds like Swainson's hawks. I've shown videos of some of them nesting this year. There's Swainson's hawks that nest in Utah that will migrate all the way south to Argentina, which is impressive. Very impressive. Now, some of those along the way, it's kind of interesting. One of the very odd species of hawks I've done videos on before is Galapagos hawks. If you're heading from North America all the way to South America, where, if it's summer here, it's winter there. If it's summer there, it's winter here, So going south, some of the Swainson's hawks along the way, passing through the Galapagos Islands, ended up, getting blown off course to the Galapagos Islands and formed a population that is now the Galapagos hawk. They genetics have shown Galapagos hawks evolved directly from Swainson's hawks. But instead of hunting little crickets and mice and things like Swainson's hawks do, they're hunting giant, huge iguanas. And so over time, that favored them being much beefier. So if you go to the Galapagos Islands, or if you ever see any videos of the Galapagos hawks, they have these big old huge gnarly feet, and they're just, I'm going to hunt an iguana, and they're massive. And they came from the most diminutive of the bootial hawks of Western North America, the Swainson's. I'm a little Swainson's hawk, but now I've evolved to hunt iguanas. They're incredible. So migration can have side effects like that over time, where you have new populations forming and kind of getting isolated and doing their own thing. So we have both bird hunting raptors that migrate south, and we also have rodent hunting raptors that migrate south. Now remember, the caloric intake, you're looking at 80-90% of your caloric intake is going just to keeping your body warm. If you're a predator, you're hunting every day of your life. Maybe you eat a really big meal and you take a day or two off, but basically you have to make a kill every day of your life. Now, you're just doing your thing otherwise. You're not like, I'm dancing around, I'm a predator. No, you're trying to conserve energy. And then all of a sudden it's like, now you gotta move and fly hundreds or even thousands of miles south. That's gonna take up a lot of energy. Now, if you've seen my videos and you watched some of my hawks soaring, it is true that hawks do know how to manage the winds. They'll find an area with updrafts at the base of a mountain, they'll circle up and go up thousands of feet, and then we'll just coast down, for 40, 50, 60 miles until they hit another section where they're all bottlenecked together and they all ride the same updrafts and go together, and go up and go together. I have a falconer friend of mine who also does paragliding, where he goes interstate and he follows the birds in the sky. He doesn't just go down a hill, he just goes from mountain range to mountain range. And I won't say his name because I didn't ask permission, but he's a very well-renowned falconer and a very well-renowned paraglider. And he's like, oh my gosh, this time of year it's insane. You get up there with them and you just have thousands of raptors migrating with you, hitting these exact same ridge points where the air itself will funnel them all together. So even if you're utilizing wind updrafts and then gliding, that is still a caloric intake. And when you're doing that, you're not hunting, you're flying. You're flying and you're migrating. So anytime they land, boy, they're desperate for food. So you got to remember, this is a very difficult time of year for raptors, because these babies that hatch this year, they're like, oh, life's easy. I have all this food. All of a sudden, mom and dad leave. Oh, I had to learn how to hunt. Well, I'm still hunting. Oh, those ground squirrels are suddenly... they went underground and they all went into hibernation. Or all the songbirds I was hunting ditched out. So now they've had to start to go south, and now they're hungry, and now they're weak compared to how they were fat in the summer and just like doing great. So they're really quickly learning the value of food. They're very quickly learning to appreciate a good meal, because meals are starting to become few and far between. And it's colder, so they're burning through more calories. They're migrating, so they're burning through more calories. This is a difficult time of year for them. And again, 80-90% chance they're going to die just through natural causes, because nature is cruel. So that's where we come in as falconers. If you are trapping a migrating bird, a passage bird we call them, then when you're reaching this time of year, this is ideal, because they've gotten rid of some of the baby mentality. Mom and dad have left them, and their food supply where they are living has changed. And so now they're like, whoa! So they've gotten rid of that baby mentality, that gimme, gimme, gimme. I'm just going to beg. I'm going to vocalize. I'm going to be aggressive towards you. And I've done videos talking about that, watching my videos on imprints and training imprints and the problems to look out for. That's basically gone. By middle of September, and once you get into October, any bird you're catching, that should be gone from their mind. They're like, oh, but they don't know anything different. They're just like, hey, well, this is just kind of a new life here we got going on. And if you trap a bird at this time, that's just in their mind. Well, I had this stage of life, then this stage of life. Now here's the life where I went home with a falconer, and now he's feeding me and he's training me, and we're learning how to hunt together. It's just part of the natural progression. And they have learned to appreciate the value of food. Now remember, this, I always say this in all my videos, and I always say it again. Remember, in nature, food is the language of social bonding for raptors. That is how you say, that's how you build trust. Because in the wild, everybody wants to either kill you and take your food or kill you and make you food. And the only one who doesn't is your parent until they ditch out on you, and your mate. Those are the only ones. And you're neither of those things, but you're sitting there and you're like, hey, okay, you can eat off my fist. It's okay. And it's like, oh, wait, I'm going to put my head down where you could attack me, but then, oh, I can do that. I can actually put my head down and eat off your fist. It seems ridiculous, especially to mammal people. If you've worked with cats or dogs or some other, if you worked with wild cats like a bobcat or a cougar, if you're in the animal training industry, then it seems insane how quickly a passage bird trains. This is a wild predator, and how quickly, 6-7 days you have them flying to your fist wild and coming back. How can it be so fast? Well, it's because they've learned, oh my gosh, food matters. Food is precious. Wait a minute, this dumb human is giving me food, and they're not my mate and they're not my parent, but they're speaking that deep language of trust that only a parent or a mate can speak, which is, hey, you eat off of my glove, you can fly to my glove, you can trust me. I'm giving you food. I'm not killing you to take your food, and I'm not killing you to make you food. No, instead, I am providing food. It is not just a reward system like with a dog. It is so much deeper. It is the language of social bonding, and it's magical, and it is the whole thing that makes falconry possible. You can train any raptor of any age. In theory, I've done it. I've taken rehab birds that have been, old birds and trained them up for educational purposes, or I've helped with other zoos, helped train their eagles before, this eagle's 20 years old, and how, so I've done that, but really, the first year passage bird is magic because all these things have happened in order. Raised by my parents, I'm begging for food. My parents ditch out on me, I have to learn how to hunt. Oh, I've learned how to hunt, but all of a sudden, all the food disappears. Oh, now I gotta start migrating south. I'm hungry, I'm tired, I'm weak. Oh, this falconer got me. September, October, locally, is the magic time. Now, once you get into November, here, I'm in Utah, Merlins. We get Merlins. We even get Merlins potentially in September. But really, once you're getting into November is when you're really getting the thick of the Merlins coming in. It's also the same time. I think in Utah, Merlins are kind of a November start time. Wherever you live, talk to your falconers in your area and learn the biology of the area. Learn what the birds do. Learn their movements, their patterns, when, how, and why. One of the things we watch for, Budios, if you're going after a buzzard, like a rough-legged hawk, a red-tailed hawk, whatever, some of these, a ferruginous hawk, they can see in the spectrum of color where to them anywhere a rodent has gone to the bathroom, to them it appears as like a fluorescent pink. So they just go around, and then if they see a field with a bunch of what to them is a bunch of little pink splotches, they'll just line up there. So, you're looking for farm fields if you're going after a buzzard like that. You're looking for farm fields, but you're trying to find the one that has enough rodents that it's drawing in all the raptors. And you might be going mile after mile, not seeing any hawks, and all of a sudden here's a field with 10 red-tailed hawks hunting. You're like, wow, how did that happen? That's how it happens. You got to understand that. You got to understand what crops in your area are most conducive to having birds. So keep an eye on, even in the summer, drive through fields and start to see, walk the fields and find out what lives in your area, and don't just go looking randomly. Think it through. Think it through. Usually, I happen to know, I have Cooper's hawks coming through my yard every year. That's just, I have a big giant box elder tree in my backyard. It's a good place for a Cooper's hawk to stop by. So a lot of times I'll put one of my compartment traps in the backyard, go get a capture permit if I want, I'll just have, bait and have sparrows that'll just come and eat. And then if I'll just set up a trap, that'll attract Cooper's hawks naturally coming to go after the sparrows that come and eat in my yard. But then, hey, if I want to catch Cooper's hawk, just go out and buy a capture permit and just get some of those sparrows and put them in a compartment trap. Cooper's hawk comes passing through the neighborhood and gets caught. So that's in your own yard, not even having to go anywhere. So you have to understand the biology and the natural movements of the birds in your area. And it's very important to do, and it's very important to understanding how migration works and in order to have success with your trapping. So I think this video is already getting kind of long, so I'm going to end it here. But let me know what birds migrate through your area and when. Again, in my area, you know, really first weekend of October is when the magic time starts usually here, and then it goes on through January. So let me know your thoughts. If you haven't already, if you could please hit subscribe, and as always, happy hawking.